All right, welcome back, guys and girls. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to wire this thing up. And when I say wire it up, we're actually going to draw it up before we wire it up. And I was always told that it's a lot cheaper to use a pencil than it is to start getting all those material out, tools out, and drilling holes and cutting wire and wasting material before you really know how to do the project, right? So as we talked about in the last video, we all are learning this for the very first time. So that wiring diagram is something that happens in the heads of most electricians on small residential projects, simpler projects out there. But for us just learning, this is a great way for us to kind of understand and identify what's happening in the circuit. So using our symbols page that we have posted, I want you to remind me what this is called. 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 Okay, so here we go. We start with our neutral bar here, which is connected to the ground. As we learned in our last video a long time ago, we talked about that transformer on the pole outside your house. And at that transformer, we do create a center tap. Sorry, can't spell. I'm trying to write too fast. Center tap. And off that center tap, we've got our 120 volts to the center, and we've got our 240 volts across both phases of a system. That center tap, believe it or not, at the pole outside your house gets connected to the earth or ground. Okay, so when we say the neutral, which is that center tap, is what derives that neutral, just like we talked about in the past videos, that allows you to get the 120 volts. If we actually look at that pole outside your house, that neutral, that white wire, is actually also connected or bonded to the earth, to the ground. What does that mean? They drive metal ground rods that are 8 feet long into the dirt, both outside your house and outside of your telephone pole where that big transformer is mounted up way up high. Okay, so if you go outside your house, you looked at an electrical meter that we took a picture of, you might see some bare copper wires. Don't touch or mess with them, but you can see them, observe them, that they are running along the outside of the house, and they are extended along the foundation wall, and they will eventually dive off into the ground and connect to an 8-foot long rod that is buried deep within the earth. Okay, you can see a fun trick. You can Google a video of somebody trying to drive or install these ground rods. And where do we live? We live in Rockaway. So when we're trying to drive these ground rods, these big metal spikes into the ground, you can imagine that we're hitting all kinds of rocks on the way, and these rods are getting bent. These rods are getting bent. The rods are getting broken. So this is a big, physical challenge in the electrical installation. All right, back to the wiring diagram. So here we go. We're going to start with the easiest things first. And these are just very specific rules that we're going to kind of have to remember about the electrical system, an AC 120 volt system. So we do have our ground. And here are the key terms here. When we talk about the ground, I want us to remember that everybody gets grounded. I say this in my house. My children would go to school. They come back home from school. They're all got the backpacks on. They walk in the door. They're all excited. I said, "Oh, hey kids, how are you? How's your day at school today?" And they're about to talk. "Oh, it was great." And I say, "You're grounded." What? Yeah, in my house, everybody gets grounded. Okay. And what does that mean electrically? Electrically, that means that all of the devices, okay, whether it be the receptacle outlet or that light fixture, needs to be grounded. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to run that bare copper wire all the way through, and that's going to connect off to each single device. And I'm going to put some splices in here, and that'll help us remember how to make those connections. Okay, but here's the rule. We talk about the ground. When we're drawing the ground, this is my ground symbol here, just like on my symbol sheet. Everybody gets grounded. Ground wire. Everybody gets grounded. Okay, so that just tells me that I'm going to put this symbol underneath every single device. Okay, so that symbol, every. I call them devices, components, whatever you want to call them. I call them devices in the business. Okay, so that's our ground. That's our bare copper wire, or typically our green. Sometimes if it does have insulation on it, they'll make it green. The green screws indicate ground. Okay, so now we've got our grounds taken care of. Let's move along. We're going to talk about that white wire, which is going to be represented by a dashed line, and we will call that our neutral. Same thing, we talked about that original transformer. If we're coming off that center tap off that transformer, we know from the past videos that's how we create our neutral in our residential 120 volt, 240 volt electrical system. Neutral. Okay, so who gets a neutral? The question about the neutral is the neutral is going to act as a return path, so anything that's using electricity is going to get the neutral. We talked about this when we talked about the basic circuit in the very beginning of the year. We talked about the 3 parts to a basic circuit. So if we had asked you in September what the 3 parts of a basic circuit are, you would probably be able to repeat it back to me, hopefully right now. You got a power supply, you got conductors, and you got a load. Okay, so you got a power supply, you got conductors, and you got a load. All review, that's why I'm going quick. So these are going to use electricity in a circuit. Does a light light up? Absolutely. Can we plug something into an outlet? Absolutely. It's going to use electricity? Absolutely. So these 2 devices are going to be requiring a neutral because they're going to use electricity. So I'm going to bring my neutral to everybody using. And we'll talk a little bit further about that when we get to switches. I'm going to go ahead and draw my neutral with my template. Draw those dashed lines over.